Welcome to Catholic Answers Live Supershow. I am the host, and there's no side today. So I decided to go down the hall and get Thomas the TikTok Engine to join me.
We're back, baby.
We're so back.
We're so back. we haven't had a TikTok Engine appearance since shortly after the Pope was elected.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, I kind of flamed out on the segment a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking about bringing it back. But yeah, my triumphant return.
Welcome back.
Just had to have Cy leave the building for, I don't even remember why he's gone right now.
Well, I say we take over until he actually decides to come back on a Super Show day.
I agree. Let's do every Super Show without him and see how much better that
I
gets.
certainly hope he's watching this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Cy. Watch out. Watch out. All right.
what's up, Chad? Good to have you guys here. Let's see. All right. So can I give you the introduction of what we're going to talk about?
Please, go on.
Just to give you guys a little bit of a context of what we do here at Catholic Answers, every Monday we do a convocation where we have one of our staff members, usually an apologist, sometimes not. They'd give a little reflection just to get us going through the week. And this time around, we actually had the one and only Thomas the TikTok Engine do the convocation. And I loved it so much. I was like, dude, let's do this on the Super Show. So I want you to talk about what you talked about at the convocation.
Well, first I'll tell you what I didn't talk about.
All right.
I mean, first of all, I was flattered to be asked to do that because I didn't know that anyone here knew that I had thoughts in my head beyond what the next TikTok is we should make. But when Siobhan, the assistant to Chris Check, asked me to do it, asked me to lead convocation this last week, I was like, sure, I had one idea in mind. And then I went home and I talked to my wife about it, my wife Teresa, and she talked me off of that idea because it talked a lot about death. I'm not going to lie. It was like, and it's November, it's Memento Mori, it's appropriate.
And is that your death metal roots that were coming out?
Yeah, I mean, what else do you expect when you ask one of the metal guys in the office to lead convocation in November, the month of All Souls? Anyway, thank you to my wife. I think she actually was telling me the truth there, that maybe I should back off a little bit. Good idea, as always. But I had another idea later on that turned into today's show topic, as it turns out, today's Super Show topic. And yeah, I see Jamie in the chat says, I don't think I've ever seen Rick and Morty. And Jamie, I will commend you, and I will say, like,
Don't.
I can't recommend it in good faith. This is going to be about an episode that I watched, and I will say I watched a handful of seasons of the show. So but it's not the most edifying show. I don't really watch it anymore. I fell off.
Because it probably makes you feel like garbage afterwards.
A little bit, a little bit, just a little gross. It's an adult cartoon. It's very contemporary. It's a product of the age we're in. It's irreverent often for irreverence's own sake. So I just give that as preface. Like I can't really recommend in good conscience that anyone go and watch Rick and Morty, but every now and then you can get a pretty interesting insight out of it. The show is mostly, the dominant philosophy on the show is pretty nihilistic, materialistic, atheistic, scientistic, tick, 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 tick. But
talk.
Yep. Man, that was too quick. That was too quick. But it's not the only philosophy, and they do occasionally dabble in discussing religious themes.
So set up the clip you're going to talk about.
Yeah. So we're not going to play it, are we? Are we going to play it?
I wasn't planning on playing it now.
Okay. Not that we. Yeah. But so this was, I thought, one of the most interesting times when this show talked about religion. This episode opened with, first, the premise. Sorry. Anyone who has not seen Rick and Morty, and hopefully will not, the premise of the show is this mad scientist grandpa, Rick, and his awkward adolescent grandson, Morty. And they get in all sorts of sci-fi hijinks and all that. And one of the episodes opens inside a video game world. And if you know the show, it's the video game Roy, where you play as a guy named Roy, you live his life. But this show opens in the video game world in which Morty's consciousness has been trapped and spread out among all the NPCs. if you don't know what an NPC is, it's like the video game equivalent of a background extra in a movie. Like they exist just to take up space in the background and like talk to the player with a few canned lines.
Non-playable characters.
Exactly, non-playable characters. So Morty's consciousness has been trapped inside this video game through some mishap and spread out among all the NPCs. And Rick has to enter the game and explain the situation to all of these NPCs. And Morty's consciousness is spread so thin that like none of these NPCs know that they are Morty. They just go about their little NPC lives and they all just talk with the same exact voice. They all have the same exact Morty voice crack teenager voice the whole time.
Girls.
Including the girls. Yeah. Every single person, regardless of age, sex, they all sound exactly like Morty, and that's it. So Rick has to enter this game as the player character, and he has to tell all of them that they live in a video game and they are all like 1/2 millionth of his grandson, and he needs their cooperation to escape. But as I said, these characters are incapable of understanding this. They're just NPCs. That's it. And Rick is like nearly beside himself with frustration as he tries to convince them that ultimate reality, the world that they're walking around in, is not what it first seems to them. He's telling them, you guys live in a video game. I'm trying to tell you this. This is urgent. You have to listen to me. You have to believe me. So the parable might be, I see this as a parable, and the parable might be obvious, but I'll spell it out anyway. Rick is obviously here corresponding to a prophet or a messianic figure, right? The video game world corresponds to our world, and the real world from which he comes and to which he promises to lead Morty is heaven, right? That's the allegory that they're drawing here. Is this prophet comes down to the world and says, the world is not what it seems, and you need to do what I say and act as I tell you to act. So, and what's interesting is that as the viewer watching this show, watching this episode, just the first 2 minutes of this episode, I know the full picture. I know that Rick is telling the truth here, and it's the most natural thing in the world for me to grow just as frustrated as Rick when the NPCs can't grasp what he's telling them. The scene has a great bit where three of them in the span of a few minutes, they all just ask, "Are you my grandpa?" And he just keeps going, "Yes, yes, 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 you are all 1/5 millionth of my grandson. I need you to get that through your head. Are you my grandpa? Oh my gosh, we're gonna get nowhere with this." He's going crazy, and I am too as the viewer. I understand the urgency. I understand the urgency of the situation. I want them to follow him to freedom. It's the most natural thing in the world, if you know the full picture, to feel the same exact way Rick does. But now, imagine, dear listener, if you, viewer, I guess, imagine if you walked out the door right now and heard a man preaching that exact same message, or something like it. Would you even give him a second thought? Or would you write him off as a loony right away? What would he have to do to convince you that he was telling the truth? It really makes me pause for a second to think about that. Like, really bring that situation into my life and think, like, what would he have to do? What would my reaction be to that?
Well, it's interesting because there's a parallel between Rick coming into this false world, this world where they're all trapped, and he's trying to allow them to escape. And he even recognizes, guys, stop saying, "Ooh, I'm not a religious leader."
Yes.
Which
yeah.
Such a parallel to Christianity in a lot of ways.
Right. To the kind of lukewarm Christianity,
Yeah.
or to the Christianity that gets too comfortable. And like one of the reasons that this stuck out to me was like one of the reasons this captured me so well was because I've kind of lived in a Catholic bubble for a while, especially working at Catholic Answers. Like I am aware of objections to the faith and I defend them, but most of the people that I work with, well, literally everyone I work with, and most of the people I surround myself with for most of my daily life are living, practicing Catholics who take their faith seriously. And so I don't have to contend with these kinds of big questions that underlie the faith all the time. And as you alluded to, so where I was going with that is like this allegory punctured that safe space bubble just a little bit, and that's why it got me thinking so much this way. And as you alluded to, one line sticks out, and is when Rick says during this whole interaction, he says, "This is not a religion. This is a real thing. This is a real thing." And he says this both at the beginning and later when the NPCs, they all go, ooh, whoa. They say, are you my grandpa? Yes, I'm all your grandpa. Oh, and Rick is like, no, that's exactly what I don't want you to react. I don't want you to do that because we got to go. We got to move. We got to get snapping. So he doesn't want them to just adopt this as an ideology or something, just kind of wear this idea and then go about the rest of their lives. It's not one belief to be picked over a handful of other kind of equally valid beliefs and then, just made part of your identity and you go about your day. No, this is like something that should rock your world, shock you, shake you to your core. So that's the setup. And this could be taken as a blanket critique of all organized religion. It could be taken that simply. And you could be forgiven for doing that because, as I said, the show in general is very atheistic, very nihilistic. Rick is very much that kind of character. Again, I don't think it's to the exclusion of any other worldviews, but it's the dominant worldview. So you could take it as a lazy atheist critique of all religions. Say you all sound exactly like this. All your prophets are just as crazy as a guy saying you live in a video game. So there. I don't take it that way. Partly because, again, the show lets other worldviews have their say. But I think it's more interesting to take that as a challenge to myself and to all of you listening, and to all my coworkers who I gave this spiel to on Monday. I think it's more interesting to take it as a challenge to, is this how I regard my faith? Is it something that shakes my world and challenges my perception of ultimate reality? Is it something I just say, oh, cool about and go on with my life? Or is it something that shakes my world? Some of the claims that Catholicism makes are quite extraordinary, and we don't realize it because many of us, I think, who live comfortably in our Catholicism don't realize it because they grow dull with repetition. So first, that God is real. Just think about it for a second, not just as a proposition. Think about it. An infinite, uncreated, all-good divine essence exists of itself and loves us into being at every passing moment, like consistently. And then 2,000 years ago, a man in Galilee, just a guy, not a prince, not a leader of any established movement.
It's a poor guy.
A poor guy in Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth? He popped up claiming that he was not a mere man. He was that God in the flesh. He was born of a virgin who do not tend to give birth. He was killed and buried and then came back to life, which dead people do not tend to do. And one of the things he came down to tell us is that this world is not all there is. And he wants to bring us with him into his home with that same God. And for good measure, at the end of time, everyone who ever died will be raised again in their body and walk around. Literally, like we'll walk around in an elevated state of existence. Think about how extraordinary these claims are. These are claims about ultimate reality. It's not what it first seems. And think about these claims, again, not just as propositions to assent to and recite every Sunday in the creed, excuse me, but think about how wildly each one of these claims, each one of these truths, seems to diverge with what your day-to-day sensory experience tells you. And then think about what it would mean for your life if they are true. Is this how we regard the faith? And don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that these claims, that these central doctrines of the Catholic faith are like equivalent in evidence, and they're not equivalent to the claim that we all live in a video game world. There is evidence. There is reason. You can reason through these things and look at historical truths and everything. But at bottom, it's so other from how we experience the world on a day-to-day basis that it should rock our world a little bit to hear that.
I always try to put myself in the position of one of the followers. So I would be Morty in this situation, and it wouldn't click for me. I always fear that if I saw Jesus walking around, would I actually change my life, or would I actually believe? Because I think I tend to approach things as very, very skeptical. And I think I would turn my back on him because I would think he's just a loon.
You would think it's something similar to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The radicalness of the claims at the time
Yeah.
is so unexpected, right? and that's why the true test of this challenge is, will I be like Rick in this regard? Will I act upon these truths and tell them to people with the urgency it deserves, even if I seem a little bit weird? Will I do this? They might regard me with bemusement at best or hostility at worst. Do I think the message is that important? This is a challenge. This is something that I think we need to examine ourselves with a lot as believers to make sure that we haven't grown too comfortable in this, right? And to bring it around to Catholic Answer's mission itself. This is the mission, by the way. This is the mission, to tell people that ultimate reality is not what it first seems, and to live like that. The claims grow dull with repetition, but like when you grasp the otherness of the world that Jesus came from and wants to bring us to, and the otherness of God from humanity, even as he wants to be intimate with us, he is so infinitely other from us in being. When you fully grasp that, you can't help but live differently. And the saints were like that. Once again, in this respect only, not the alcoholism, not the nihilism, not the
Although it's
not the deadly pride.
before turning to Christ, maybe some.
Yes, perhaps. In this respect only, post-conversion, these saints were like Rick. They were convinced that ultimate reality is not what it seems, and the urgency of that truth. For example, St. Francis of Assisi, when he was ready to divest himself of everything that separated him from God, from that reality, he stripped completely naked out in the public square and threw everything at his father's feet, right?
Yep.
And said, "This is all yours. I don't need it anymore." He took it seriously. Christ rocked his world. St. Thomas Aquinas, like when he didn't do anything like that, but when he was wrestling with a really, really hard, thorny theological problem, writing his Summa or any of his works, he would occasionally go into the chapel and caress the tabernacle, like rest his head upon it and talk to Jesus inside it, because he knew like that's where everything he had came from. That's where he needed to go to get help with this. Even if maybe his brothers thought he was a little weird. Maybe they thought he was a little weird, right? Mother Teresa lived in the slums of Calcutta. She lived in the filth and among the most downtrodden in society. She ministered to the dying right in front of her because she knew that right in front of her was Christ. Like she knew that. She was taken by that truth. John the Baptist wore hair shirts and ate bugs and ran around in the desert and called the Pharisees broods of vipers and dunked people in water. I don't know if he did it like this. I like to imagine he was grabbing them by the hair and dunking them in water and saying, "Repent, repent." But because he knew someone greater was coming. He knew someone greater was coming. That was his whole mission, was to tell people that this guy's going to come who's going to rock your world. You have to be ready for it.
And to the everyday person, they look like crazy people.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I don't know about you, Thomas, or you, Jeff, if you've met people that are so on fire for the faith, you're like, this guy's a little crazy almost, a little out there.
Yeah, it can make you feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And always afterward, I try to look back and think, was I uncomfortable because they were speaking truths that I'm not fully embracing, or was it because they just maybe were a little bit off?
You know, I'm going to call this person out because I love him to death. Eric Tafoya.
Yep.
is one of those people, and I tell him, I was like, I've told him before that he kind of reminds me a little bit of St. Francis of Assisi, where it's like he's seen the dark side, he's seen the other life in its true grittiness, to where he wants to just completely reject that world and fully embrace Jesus. To sometimes when I'm talking to him, like, I'm not Catholic enough to talk to this guy. It's like,
Right. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, especially with our guy Eric.
Yeah.
Like every time I'm done talking with him or hearing him talk, I feel like I don't know, like the Spirit is trying to push me a lot harder than he was before. You know, like Eric is good at convicting. If none of you guys have ever heard of our guy Eric Tafoya, Erick, right? Is how you spell his name. Look up his channel. He's got a channel, right?
Yeah,
He's got,
traditional urban Catholic.
Yeah, look up traditional urban Catholic. Tremendous speaker. But he's one of these guys that I've met that embodies this. Yeah. This and you know I pray that he becomes a saint. Really, his story is amazing.
But doesn't it make you feel like should I be like that?
Yes.
Should I make people feel that uncomfortable?
Yeah.
In the beginning, and then realize and allow them to eventually realize, oh, this is Jesus talking through this person.
Exactly.
Because the longer you talk to him, the more you realize this guy is so full of energy, but it's not him speaking. It's Christ that speaks through him, which is really cool.
Yes, exactly. Eric, I get a lot of the same feeling talking to Eric as I did meditating on this 2-minute segment from a modern adult cartoon, which is just it's amazing. It's amazing the means that God uses to speak through us. So and that's why like this whole monologue, I've been talking just as much as myself as I am to everyone else. Like living in this Catholic bubble has dulled my sensitivity to the radical reality that I'm called to believe, and I'm kind of scared to go out there and sound weird. I don't do it enough. We might have a book about that, actually. Not that this was all just an extended plug for How to Talk About Jesus with Anyone by Cy Kellett and Steve Dawson, available at shop.catholic.com. But, I mean, if you are convicted, that was certainly a great handbook to pick up. Jeff, do we have, like, the money sound effect? Do we have that? Bingo! There we go. There we go. Nice. Hope I get commission from that. No, but and as a last note, this might be one of the many reasons that Christ first entrusted his message to the outcast and the downtrodden, because they had less to lose in social capital. Like the tax collector Matthew, who was cast off from his Jewish brethren for betraying them to the Romans. The rough Galilean fishermen who probably weren't living. Well, no, Simon straight up said they were sinful men. They were so used to being cast off, to being regarded as of lesser station to other people, maybe that they didn't care so much what anyone else thought, rather, if they started yelling about a man who'd risen from the dead, which again, people don't tend to do. That probably sounded weird, but if you look through Acts, I did this once. I read through Acts, just paying special attention to every homily, every sermon that these apostles are giving. They mention over and over and over and over and over again. The biggest thing they mention is this guy rose from the dead. This guy was killed and he rose from the dead, and he's the one who fulfilled all our prophecies, and he proved that he fulfilled it by rising from the dead. This should be so much more earth-shattering than it is, right?
You know what's cool when you read the Gospels and then you go to Acts of the Apostles? It's a giant shift of their personality. They go from these weak, cowardly men who are thinking about, well, where am I going to sit on the throne? When you're on your throne, where am I going to be? To just not caring about anything except for salvation, except for the resurrection of Christ. And that's the transformation that we need to see in all of us.
Yeah. Must obey God rather than man. Yep. Even if like the only thing that we're trying to gain from man is just like not being thought of as weird. Yeah. We have to obey God instead. And again, I'm talking to myself, man. I'm talking to myself. This is so hard to do. But this is just what's been on my mind now ever since I started thinking about that scene again. So I encourage everyone to examine themselves like this occasionally. Just think about being an NPC if you can, and hearing the Christian claims for the first time. It's so difficult to do, but think about hearing those claims for the first time in the context of just hearing someone talk about it as something you'd never even heard of or thought of before, and gain back some perspective on just how earth-shaking these truths are, because hopefully meditating on that a lot and praying for the courage to do what we have to do to go make disciples will actually fill us with that conviction and invite the Holy Spirit back in to do that.
It's such an interesting time that we live in, though, that we are so desensitized, especially here in the West. I've heard people explain that the way religion is given to people right now, it's almost like a vaccine. You get just enough of it until you're immune to it, to where you hear the story of Jesus, to where you hear, Jesus died and he resurrected, and now there's all these followers, or you get enough of it to where you almost become numb to the message. It's so to try to get that perspective of you're hearing this for the first time, and you're like, hold on a second, I can't wrap my head around it. It's just, I think we still have that same reaction. I can't get my head around it, of how truly absurd it almost sounds. Yeah,
I like the vaccine analogy because it's a different world from what the apostles were going out into. It's a post-Christian world. Yep. So the apostles in Jewish times, they were living in a world that was expecting the Messiah, and then they had to convince all their fellow Jews that the Messiah had come. And then as far as the Gentile world went, they had to convince them that there was this man who rose from the dead and was ready to bring them into the fold of the Jews as well, to graft them onto that vine. And now, 2,000 years later, a lot of people have at least heard the name of Jesus and have heard some probably distorted version of his message. and then and they've just decided it's not for them, and we have to get around that barrier now. We have to puncture that veneer. So it's a different world that we live in, for sure, from the apostles. But I mean, the solution is the same. The solution is to pray, to ask for God to give us the Holy Spirit, to push through any fear. I mean, the fact that the other side of the coin is that, of course, like, we live in a different world as far as who we're evangelizing. We're also living in a different world insofar as, at least in the first world, we're not facing death most of the time for proclaiming that message. Maybe our brothers and sisters in Africa, in some of the Islamic occupied places in the world, they are facing that. So, thank God that we're not facing that here in America. The challenge is actually, that's another shot of perspective. The challenge is much less frightening when you really think about it that way. We should not be that scared of being thought of as weird when our brothers and sisters in Africa are literally being put to death for believing that.
Literally in Nigeria, that's exactly what's happening right now. So pray for them, and also in Latin America, whatever's happening in Nicaragua right now, it's gonna get there. It's not as bad as it is in Nigeria, but it's getting there. So,
I see Ristard Bear is asking in the chat. He's asking, can someone share a link to what the episode is talking about?
I'll send it.
Yeah. This is just the intro to one episode of Rick and Morty.
And keep in mind, it's not the cleanest. So
it's
at your own
it's also not the worst that you'll see from Rick and Morty. But
exactly.
But yeah, you're all on alert. There's a few
there you go.
There's a few of those moments in there. So watch with discretion. Definitely not with your kids around. But yeah, there's that's the intro of the episode, and it's so wild that the Lord can speak to me through adult animation somehow. You can't block him out no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, well, Absurd Scandal said you can still enjoy some of the aspects of a show, such as the episodic stories, without absorbing the philosophy it may sometimes offer you, and even then you can learn from their errors, as from a compass always pointing wrongly, meaning its opposite is the correct path. So
definitely, that requires wisdom and discernment, which is why I can't just recommend the show outright to just anyone. But that can certainly happen if you go into something that is not the most edifying, but you're determined to find the good in it. Yeah, I mean, that can work.
Well, and so we had talked about you doing a segment called "Oops, Accidental Theology," and I think this specific thing that we just talked about Rick and Morty is just that, something that's not fully approved by Catholics, and especially if you talk to most Catholics in media. But there's a nugget of wisdom there that they rediscovered.
Yes.
Decent theology.
Yes. Yeah. I would say it wasn't entirely accidental, but more they got deeper than they thought they did. Yeah. I think in that regard, a lot of the stuff that I have thought about for a long time, as far as oops, accidental theology is things where like Tumblr people just accidentally discover that virtue is a mean. It's not even explicitly religious, but it's something that the Catholic intellectual tradition has talked about, at length before. But I won't spoil that one too much in case that's forthcoming.
Yeah, we'll get a little more into it. So, if y'all ready to move on to the next part, we can jump into that.
Let's rock.
All right. So, speaking of Africa, there's a new document that's gonna come out from the Vatican, from the DDF, the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, that's geared towards Africa, and the document is called "We Too in Praise of Monogamy: Doctrinal Note on the Value of Marriage, Exclusive Communion, and Mutual Belongings." And the mutual belonging is going to be released in the end of November. So it's so funny how, especially here in the U.S. and in the Western world, we tend to be a little more self-absorbed. That if it has nothing to do with America, then why is the Vatican or why is anybody else even talking about it? And then there's things that we have a problem with it, saying, why hasn't the Vatican addressed it? Well, this is one of those things that something that's happening in another continent that kind of doesn't affect us too much, at least not on the popular basis, the church is addressing.
Yeah, this is a document that's going to defend the church's traditional teaching of monogamy and against polygamy. And yeah, I had that reaction too when I saw it. I was like, who is having a problem with this right now? Like, we know there's the occasional cult leader who says, God says I must have many wives, and somehow he gets more than one woman to believe him on that.
We're not going to mention Waco, okay? Don't mention it.
Yeah, we will not mention Waco, Texas, and the Branch Davidians. Definitely not. As it turns out, that's a very Americentric worldview that I have, because I did see this. I did see, people talking about this when the news came out that this was going to be released at the end of the month, and I saw those reactions. And
my thing was, the first thing that popped into my head was, why?
Yeah.
Just why?
Yeah. Why? Who needs this? Well, it turns out that the church in Africa needs this.
Yep.
It turns out that the church in Africa is growing very, very rapidly. We're really seeing almost a new Pentecost there. But it turns out that a lot of people in Africa who are becoming Catholic are coming from backgrounds of pagan worldviews that permitted polygamy. And so people are wanting to convert to enter the church, praise God, but oh no, they have multiple wives and children with each of them already. So that is actually a pastoral problem that needs to be addressed. Like, how do we deal with these situations? Well, first of all, reaffirming that, you do need to have only one wife if you enter the church. How do they address that? And that's the occasion for this document.
Yeah. The article here at the Catholic Herald says Father Armando Mateo, the dicastery's secretary, said on Tuesday that the document follows a specific request made during the Synod on Synodality from African bishops to prepare a statement on that matter. A press conference will take place at the Holy See's press office when the note is unveiled. That's the one thing that surprised me. I didn't think about that it's from the Synod. So I know, especially here in the West, you are one of two polar opposites. You are either the Synod is wasted, the Synod on Synodality is a waste of time, and the other side is like, this is exactly what we need. We need a church that listens. But again, coming from the Americentric view, it's like, what do we need to clarify? What do you want to listen to from people? What does it matter? But actually, this makes a little more sense to me.
This does.
It's humbling.
Yeah. No, it's a reminder that the church is global, and and that our problems are not the only problems. And I mean, it's also a great reminder of, like, how important the church in Africa is. Yeah. That these backgrounds that we thought were gone forever are still very, very relevant today. Unfortunately, though, it's actually more relevant to America than we previously thought. Because now in the last few days, it turns out that there's that one of those guys I talked about who said God says I need multiple wives, he's actually out there, and he's a little more mainstream than we thought. There's an article going around about a Protestant pastor who announced that he has two wives because he claims polygamy is biblical. So on the one hand, we have people coming into the church from a culture that allowed polygamy and was not Catholic, and then on the other hand, we have a branch of Christianity which is also not Catholic but says the Bible says polygamy is biblical. And so in
it's in there.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in their Bible.
It sure is in there.
Keep reading.
That's about all. That's about all I can say about polygamy. It's there, but it turns out in a weird twist of fate that maybe Africa has problems that need to be addressed, and so do America. So does America, that in a little bit more relevant of a fashion than we hoped.
It feels like we're repaganizing in some ways. It's like, well, it's in the Bible. Yeah, I think you're reading the wrong message into this thing.
Yeah. What do we say? This guy, his name is Rich Tidwell. He says he announced on Instagram recently, I have two beautiful wives, and my second wife is expecting my 8th child. And he has an article on his website on biblical polygamy, and all he does, as you can see, is he just cites a bunch of examples of it. He's claiming that God divinely ordained it in several cases, polygamy, as it were. And I just keep going back to the idea, and I think listening to Bible in a year, Father Mike talks about this a lot when we're going through those early passages and saying, just because the Bible discusses something doesn't mean the Bible approves of it. And
I gotta give
polygamy-
you the Bible verses that he quotes. So this,
Yeah.
so this is from the Blaze Media. It says he uses Exodus 21:10. Exodus 21:10 regulates but does not prohibit the practice. Tidwell claimed when it says, if he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. Cool. All right. So as long as she's eating, she's clothed, and she has her marital rights, you can still take her up.
Yeah.
That's one of the justifications that he uses.
Yeah, great. Like as long as you treat her like a human being, fine. We could deal with that. But that's the thing, right? That was the context. Was we're taking the Jewish people out of, like the Africans, the very 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 early Hebrews were being taken out of pagan cultures where polygamy was just normal, where it was natural thing. It was thought of as a natural thing for a man to have multiple wives, but they probably treated them terribly. They probably had played favorites, and it didn't go super well for a lot of marriages. And so God says, okay, we're not going to. I mean, he didn't say this. But the idea is this idea of progressive revelation, right? Where we take the people, we deal with the most essential things first, and then, like Jesus says, divorce was allowed for their hardness of heart. Same thing here. Polygamy may have been allowed for their hardness of heart, but you have to be at least one step better than your surrounding cultures. And okay, fine. If you're gonna take another wife, you got to treat her like a human being and make sure that she's got the same rights as all your other wives. Fine. We can pare it down to one wife later on when we're a little bit more ready for that.
Quacksplat says, why would anybody build their church around a centerpiece of polygamy? What?
I can think of one type of person who might do that. The real question is like, how are the women following them?
It's so interesting that we live in a time, especially where it's so easy. This is one of my problems with sola scriptura, where you can interpret your own scripture your only way. There's another example of this, actually based out of all places, Germany, where there's a
wow. I'm shocked.
The headline of the Times says, "The church defends pastor who blessed," and scare quotes, "marriage of 4 men," and it says, yeah, exactly. So it says this pastor oversees the ceremony between 2 Latvians, a Thai, and a 4th man believed to be Spanish. Jeff, have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, you've seen the world more than us. So.
No, the Germans really put their efforts into some weird things this last 100 years.
Yeah, this is the most German story I've heard in a minute.
Well, the German culture is fantastic up until like 1900, and then it just nosedived.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, didn't most of the Protestant Reformation happen in Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunate. My people have not done the world a great service since then.
My visit to Germany was one of the most awesome experiences. Actually, it was actually the first time I encountered Antifa was actually in Germany, which is very interesting. Walking around Augsburg, we were looking for the image of Our Lady Endure Knots, and all of a sudden we hear a bunch of protesting and people dressed in black holding these flags that say anti-fascist. I was like, this is Germany. I don't think anybody here's for fascism anymore. I think that was left behind about.
Yeah, I think they learned the lesson pretty strongly over there. I think. Yeah, good for you guys though. I guess you're holding the line pretty well against
Good
whatever.
job.
Yeah.
So this article of the Times says one of the largest branches of the German Protestant Church has defended a pastor after she blessed a relationship between 4 men and called the ceremony a marriage in the eyes of God.
According to citation needed,
Yeah.
I suppose. right. I saw that story go around too, and I thought, I think another quote she had that this so-called pastor had was it was along the lines of like, I just saw how much they loved each other, and I thought, how could God not be in favor of this? And like, boy, if vibes are what we're going off now for our theology, well, I mean, I have a few books I want to add to the Bible. Then I'm gonna base my theology around vibes. Yeah, I love this so much. How could God not be against this? Yeah, man, go ahead, run naked through the marketplace. I don't know, whatever.
There you go.
St. Francis did it. Whatever. Way to just undermine your point there, Thomas. Okay. No, it's Yeah, so as it turns out, Germany, America, and Africa all need to hear the same thing from the Vatican.
So maybe this is timely for America, for the Western
Maybe this is.
the Western Church.
Maybe this is. Maybe all of us on social media who have immediate reactions to news coming out of the Vatican don't need to react right away. Maybe that's a whole nother soapbox, man. Like, as the social media manager, like,
You see it all.
I'm tired, boss. I'm tired, boss. We don't always need to have a take, man. We don't.
Just stay quiet on occasion.
Yeah. Just let information happen. Just let information happen, and then think about it. Yeah, King Neptune. Sorry, no side today. It's me. You're stuck with me now.
I now have an assistant to the host. I am the host and the assistant to the host.
Yes.
It's kind of nice to sit in this chair on occasion, you know?
Not assistant host. No.
Well, I'm the host today, so.
Yeah, I thought I'd be assistant host.
Well,
I like assistant host. That sounds nice.
You know, let's not get a little carried away now, right?
All right, fine. Whatever. I think my assistance has been. It's worked. It's been passable. I don't know. What's our metric for that? Is it just number of chats we get?
Sure, why
I see
not?
a lot of emojis flying out though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Someone is spamming them. Is that just you, Jeff? I'll bet that's
Jeff's just hitting the button.
Jeff. All right. Hey, I'll hop in there too. I'll get that. I'll get that going on.
Absurd Scandal. Thoughts on the Good Place's ending? Have you watched The Good Place?
I've not. I think that might be on my list.
I started watching it.
Hey, yo,
Tyler.
hold on.
Oh, we'll get to you in a second, Tyler. Give me
Okay,
a second.
okay.
So I haven't finished watching it. I got to about the second season, and I'll be honest, I got bored.
Oh, darn.
I got bored. I just stopped watching it.
Too bad. I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard it's very good. I've heard it's whatever. I haven't heard anyone say it's bad. Like, I haven't heard any, like, even in the Catholic world, I haven't heard anyone say it's bad. Just
it's meh. It's a mid show, you know.
Okay.
All right, Tyler.
Sorry, Absurd Scandal. We have not seen it. Tyler, what up?
Tyler, super chat, $10. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. There we go. There we go. Man, Jeff coming in clutch with all the sound effects.
Right. This is a real improvement from the start of Super Show.
He says Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty, got caught up saying nasty stuff about children, and then the show made fun of Jesus multiple times. Look at him now. New creators, no Jesus jokes, big comeback.
Is that right?
I had no idea.
Are you thinking, Tyler, of Justin Roiland? Because I think that might be who you're talking about. Justin Roiland. The show was created by Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. And I think Roiland might have been the one who, there was a story that came out about him a couple of years ago, like where he's just not only this stuff that Tyler says, but like he was just the most unprofessional person to work with ever, and it was just not. It was not a fun work environment, and so that, in addition to some scandalous stuff about children, he ended up leaving the show, and I haven't watched it since then. But I would not be surprised if he left and the show got a little. What does he say? No Jesus jokes, big comeback. Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if it took off a little bit from then on out, because.
When you stop mocking Jesus.
Yeah. As it turns out, you might make a better product when you do that.
Exactly.
You do that.
Absurd Scandal. I got bored. Foreshadows the ending. All right, then. There you go.
Okay,
there you
then.
have it.
Okay, then. Sorry to hear that.
Mr. B, don't tell Cy that we love it when Edgar fills in. No. Please tell Cy that you love it when I fill in host. Mm-hmm. Just saying. Just throwing that out there.
When you think about it, really, I'm filling in, so I don't know. You could tell him that too. I don't know. Edgar's on these all the time, man.
Yeah, no, I am. It's kind of fun. Yeah. It's kind of fun to do this.
I don't need props though. No, I'll just go make another TikTok instead.
It says, would marriage between humans and non-humans be rational aliens that are of different species be valid sacramentally? Or that's a Jimmy Akin question.
Let's call Jimmy now. Can we do that?
You can just have Jimmy on the line, just ready to go.
Non-humans, but rational aliens, different species, valid sacrament. I have no idea.
You know what? Absurd Scandal. I might submit that to Jimmy for weird questions. So hang on to that question.
Can I take a whack at it real quick?
Go for it.
My guess would be that there would be, if you can have children, that can have children. So just as like, what is it? Like a horse and a donkey makes
a mule.
A mule, yeah. So the mule can't have children, but maybe if it's a rational species where you can have children, that there would be because what's the purpose of marriage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's my whack at it without Jimmy here.
That's interesting.
Maybe,
So it would create the mule version of a human alien subspecies.
Well, no, I would
This
hope
is
it
getting
would
weird.
I would hope it would not create a mule. That it would create a person that can propagate the species
Yeah,
further.
that's interesting. Yeah,
that would make it a natural marriage, right? That's one of the.
It wouldn't be sacramental. would it?
Yeah, is
If
that
they were baptized, it would be.
okay? So then that gets into the other Jimmy Akin question: can we baptize aliens? Which
Which Pope Francis answered.
once again? Oh, did he?
He says, "If I
Yes.
would, yeah." He said, "If I could, I would."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Maybe you could get even further into the weeds of like how far does grace extend to a species in which Christ did not become incarnate? But I'm not going to try and. As a philosophy major, I am far better at asking questions than answering them, and so I'm only going to do the asking part and let anyone else want to take on that.
Philosophy is not my thing. I failed a philosophy course in college, and I retook it with a professor that had unorthodox teaching methods, and I passed that class. That's
Okay.
what I took.
Just ask annoying questions and tell people it's Socratic.
Yeah, literally, that's it.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's it. That is not how I passed, but I passed by pretending to know what I was talking about. But yeah, I found out most of philosophy is just asking questions. It's just being weird about that.
All right. Well, before we conclude this episode of the Super Show, I do want to get into Sai's real reactions without
Sai.
Sai. Johnny,
No Sai.
hit it. Gotta do the dance.
No, I don't.
So, no Sai today. No Sai today. So, we're going to have Thomas react
Okay.
to some TikTok reels. So, since we basically talked about animation, I'm going to start you off with an animation. So,
Oh, let's do it.
hit it, Johnny.
Marge Simpson, welcome to Protestant.
And I love this one. I've seen this.
Through in one, hurrah!
Poppy, have you seen Dash?
Where's Homer and Bart?
There we go.
Now dance, you heavenly corpse!
Do you notice the Notre Dame sweater on the right?
No. Oh, where is it?
And there's a Boston one, too.
Yep.
I wish my family was with me.
Sorry, Marge, just not our
type.
sort.
Not our
I'd
sort.
like to speak with Jesus.
I'm afraid he's gone native.
Yep.
Oh, stop it! Guys, I'm serious!
I've seen that. I'm sorry you don't get a blind reaction from me on that one.
No.
That
Look,
one makes the rounds all the time.
I figured anything that I show you, you're probably already seen. So you're on social media.
Yeah,
more
you're
than
in my
like-
waters now, dude. No, that.
So when I was growing up, that was the cartoon that my parents said, we don't want you watching that.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And now you watch it, you're like, compared to with the stuff that's out there now, you talk like South Park,
Yeah.
you talk Rick and Morty, you're like, this actually is not that bad.
Now I'm telling my parents, don't watch this show. I'm telling my parents, don't watch Rick and Morty. They might be watching right now. Don't watch Rick and Morty. It's fine. You, but that's the clip that someone edited out the best line in there. Someone when they had the pinata bit and Bart hits Homer with the bat. And Homer's mad at first, but he's like, "Hey, up here, that feels good." And starts knocking himself in the head instead. That's a fun one.
I got music.
I mean,
There we go.
nice. Should we just carry? Okay, no elevator music. No. The gone native line was there was there like a crypto Catholic on The Simpsons writing that? Was he trying to throw some punch? I mean, fair enough that it's ecumenical enough that they gave Protestants a heaven, I suppose.
They get something, right?
Yeah, they get something. It's more.
What are they playing in heaven? I don't even know.
That was croquet.
Croquet.
Is that an indictment that I know that? No, I've never played it. It's just, it's more of an ethnic. It's more ethnic jokes than anything else, really, because it's the Protestants are all white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. It's wasp heaven, really, is what it is. It's wasp heaven. You wear ascots and you play croquet, and then you have what was it? We had the Mexicans, we had the Italians, we had the Irish. They omitted the Germans for some reason. Can't imagine why.
They're the precursor to the Protestant heaven,
yeah.
the croquet.
Yeah, and there's I like the, if you want to talk about oops accidental theology, that's not really accidental. There's it's fun that they show that you can that there's a healthy sort of indulgence in the good things of life and of the body. Like, forget the fighting scene for a second, I guess. I don't know, but like when they go to the Mexicans and they're having their party, and when they go to the Italians and they're loving and they're good food and they're kissing and everything, and like that's not what heaven. Well, actually, we don't know what heaven has not seen, ear has not heard, but probably we're gonna have things that are better than any bodily pleasure could give us.
I don't know. I, for one, love a piñata. Just throwing that
okay,
out
yeah,
there
yeah.
for
And if
no
it feels
odd reason.
if it feels good to get hit in the head with a bat, maybe that's great. But the point being that like you can show people enjoying those things in heaven to make the point that like those things are sort of supposed to be a foretaste for us of heaven here on earth, and it's okay to enjoy them. You don't make them your God. You don't make them your idol. You don't replace heaven with those things. But you don't need to be the puritanistic person who's terrified of all pleasure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was actually reading through our 20 Answers booklet on the Reformation, or Protestant. I think it's the Reformation. I didn't realize that who is it, John Calvin, that when he kind of created his own little utopian town of Protestant, it turned out to be like the most depressing. Like you can get I don't know, arrested or something for dancing or for like laughing or something to that effect. That I read
just
in the
made
booklet.
Footloose.
There you go. So like joy was like forbidden, you know. So that's what's interesting that I got from that.
Yeah, The Simpsons had a better idea of what heaven was like. Oh, my dad is in the chat. He says, okay, he won't watch Rick and Morty. All right, good. What goes around comes around.
All right.
Yeah.
So wait, do we call him the senior TikTok engine or just the senior engine?
You could, but I don't know. You could. I think that latter one is better because he's an engineer. He's a software engineer.
No way.
Yeah, so
All right,
that's something of a senior engine,
all right,
I suppose.
Yeah, the senior engine.
Yeah.
Senior engine graph.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, I got one more for you. It's not related to any cartoons.
Okay.
But it's just a funny kind of evangelization kind of thing.
Let's see it.
All right, Johnny, go for it.
Oh, Shane Gillis.
This could be a tough one to defend at work. But I'm gonna. This could be a tough one to defend
There
at
you go.
work.
So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, out of all the teachings, that's hard.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that we should really be letting rock our world a little bit more.
Yeah.
How can this man give us his flesh to eat, right? And I like that meme format includes the "but I'm gonna" at the end, because that's
Peter's response.
That's Peter's response.
Where else do I go?
Yeah.
You have the words of eternal life.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you this far. This is going to be a weird one, but okay, I'm on board. Jesus, who I've seen raise people from the dead and do all sorts of signs and wonders that make me believe. Fine, you can give me your flesh to eat, I guess. We'll see how that turns out later.
Yep.
Yeah. It's for the apologists here, it's that's their bread and butter at work.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
No pun intended. So that's. It's not a tough one to defend at work. It's Joe Heschmeyer wrote a whole book about it. The Eucharist is really Jesus. How I can't remember the
on the
subtitle.
surface, it sounds absurd. I mean, if you were sitting there with them in that certain episode of John 6, you're like, this is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with
Yeah,
Peter.
again, if you walked out your door and you heard someone saying that, you'd think that was kind of crazy, wouldn't you? What would he have to tell you to get you to believe? Now, you remember that the day before, he'd multiplied 2 loaves and 5 fishes, or whatever the number is, into enough to feed thousands of people.
Yep.
So maybe they didn't have as much of an excuse as I would if I walked out the door today. So they had seen it, but it's still hard. It's still really hard.
Yes, it is. All right, well, we're going to cut it a little bit short today. We're going to take a little bit of a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we're going to jump right into the radio show itself. First hour is going to be with Tom Nash. We're doing Ask Me Anything on the Sacraments. Second hour, we have an Ask Me Anything Catholicism with the one and only Tim Staples. So hang in. Johnny, roll the footage, and we'll be right back in 5 minutes.
Nice.